have a thing for skeletons? Do you wish you were stuck on an island in a massive building that houses basically only your enemies? Are you curious as to how you could reanimate a corpse? Do you get acne from thick face paint? Well, then Gideon the Ninth might be the book for you. First things first, Gideon the Ninth was a great book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Here's the deal. When we first meet Gideon, she is running away from her creepy underground village of tomb-worshipping cult members to be a soldier for the Emperor. She's been sure to grab her dirty magazines, and all she can really think about is her creepy upbringing in this creepy place and how much she wants to get away from it. So while she's waiting for her shuttle out, we actually meet our second protagonist, who is Harrowhark's reverend daughter of the Ninth House, who is also a necromancer specializing in what seems to be bone manipulation, skeletons, and also who happens to be begrudgingly close to our main protagonist, Gideon. So basically, the Emperor needs necromancers, and the necromancers need their buddies, their swords, their cavaliers to assist them in what they do. So without Gideon knowing that, Gideon's like, all right, well, I guess I won't leave to be a soldier if you win this battle. So they battle it out. It's the first time we see Harrow use her skeletons, which is super crazy at the beginning because you really aren't expecting that, I think, at all. This isn't giving anything away. This really isn't a big spoiler. Gideon loses, and so Gideon has to go with Harrow to be her cavalier. And that's where all the juicy good stuff starts. Essentially, the entire book after that initial meeting takes place on an island. On that island is a massive building that houses a bunch of different types of rooms. It's a very ancient building, and it is being used as a trial grounds for testing out all of these new duos of necromancers and their cavaliers. There are 9 houses represented, each of them with their own necromancer and cavalier. They have to solve these puzzles, unlock these keys, and generally use their necromancy skills to sort of prove their worth. So that's why they are all there. Most cavaliers and necromancers had been paired up for a lot of different reasons. It was like one of them was basically born to be a cavalier for a certain necromancer. They were trained together, things like that. It was all very organized. But of course, with Gideon and Harrow, Gideon was just this weird orphaned kid who was growing up in this tomb world, and her only companion who was her age was this necromancer. So it just kind of fell into place. And what we gather throughout the book is that that's not really how those relationships are supposed to be. So let's talk about Gideon. Gideon herself, I really liked. I think that's common. I don't think I've read about anyone not liking Gideon. She was developed exceedingly well, mostly through her dialogue, her thoughts, her actions, as opposed to straight descriptive narrative, which is a theme I will touch on quite a bit throughout this entire review. She's a headstrong brute, but one who has a really good sense for observation, really great intuition, and she's a really quick learner. All of that's really well established and continuous throughout the entire book for that character. We see her develop a really quiet understanding of her own and others' emotions, despite her sort of steel outer shell. And most satisfyingly, we see her come to terms with how much she cares for someone she so long considered her true enemy. And that's, of course, her necromancer, Harrow. And speaking of Harrow, she is definitely my favorite of the two. She is a no-nonsense, extremely intelligent, and fiercely independent lady, usually to a fault. I deeply relate to her because she struggles to ask for help, and she puts her task that she's doing at a priority list, and that's a priority above even her own health. She also gets grumpy when her concentration is broken, or when Gideon questions her requests. And that's usually because she isn't very good at saying why she's doing a thing, and Gideon's a big why type of person. The development of the relationship between Harrow and Gideon really struck me. I haven't read such well-developed characters in a really long time, and their progress from enemies to begrudging comrades to friends to more than friends to confessions of what seems to be really confused love for each other was such a wonderful ride to take on the course of this book. So now that I've got those two out of the way, these are the brief things I'll say about the rest of the book. Tamsin Muir is very talented in developing even the most minor characters. They all feel like there is so much more to their stories. And again, it's all done sort of through context, which is really, really cool. I also absolutely just adored the darkness of this book. I just said in a previous video that I like the villain's perspective. And although our lovely protagonists aren't villains, they are the creepy outcasts, cult followers of the Empire. And right away, we feel antagonization from the other characters in the book for that reason. So kind of immediately they're outcasted just because of who they are. They are effectively shown to have just as much heart and purity as these White Knight-esque heroes that we read in a lot of standard fiction and who have been written a million times over. Among all of the dark imagery, there is such a positive emotion running through it, and it's really admirable. I think Tamsin Muir did an excellent job of that. The only thing I didn't like about the book, I struggled the entire way through with the big picture of the world. The world building in this, for me, really, really lacked. And I think that's just because I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that I need balance between world-based and character development. I know usually it's one or the other for a lot of people from what I've noticed, but I really need a good balance. And I just really didn't get that on the world side of this book. We get so little about the whys and hows of this universe that everything outside of the property they're on, for me, was just a massive black hole. So much opportunity was just lost. If Muir would have just increased this book by less than 100 pages, which wouldn't have been bad at all, I really think she could have given us more on that broader worldview, even if it was contextual. Like how well she developed the characters. I feel like the only things I got from the world were contextual, but the problem was so much time was spent on developing the characters, which were great, not dissing that we really lacked anything about what the world really looks like behind all of these characters. So the lack of world building put it at 4 stars for me, unfortunately. The ending to this one created an okay lead-in to the next, but I'm really not sure. I feel like a lot of things are just thrown at us there at the end, and I'm curious to see how she puts it together in the next book, which is called Harrow the Ninth, and I'm excited to read that one. I'm excited to read more about Harrow because she was such an awesome character for me, and I'm glad to have what I expect is going to be her perspective instead of Gideon's. But I do desperately hope that we get a wider view of the world, because supposedly it's really cool. From everything I can tell, it's probably really cool, but I wouldn't know yet. I definitely hope I didn't sway anyone off its path with my rant about world building, because it really is good. I think everyone who likes fantasy should read it, especially if you're willing to step outside of traditional high fantasy. This is such a fun little ride, and it's so well done. So go ahead and comment down below if you have anything to let me know. You can also hit me up on my Instagram and my Twitter. And you can also message me or just check out my Goodreads, which is linked down below. Thank you so much for watching again, and I will be seeing you next time. Be sure to like and subscribe.